Ever since the beginning of Mordekaiser's history, he was a champion that was struggling to find a place, kind of like that awkward kid in school that didn't know where he was supposed to be, go, or act. He had countless attempts to fit in as a solo laner with his pizza feet and 13 health potions, but due to his lack of mobility and crowd control, it seemed that he would never make it in a solo lane. Because of that, Riot reworked him in Season 5 and tried to push him towards the bottom lane, which ultimately backfired and turned him into a broken and overpowered dumpster fire of a champion. Mordekaiser had well over 200 known and repeatable bugs, outdated graphics and abilities, and this is the basis for his rework in Season 9. He is fully remastered and ready to tear up the Rift. And here are ProGuides. Today, we're going to tell you how to play him. Before we begin, make sure that you are checking out ProGuides.com because we have a brand new feature that you cannot miss, and it's called InstaPro. Whenever you need coaching 24/7, 365, we are here to help you and coach you. This is on-demand coaching by the best of the best, and just like how you get use out of these videos every single day, you can get even more use out of ProGuides.com. If you want to see massive improvements to your rank for free, then use the link in the description down below. Mordekaiser fits into multiple team comps, and there are several reasons why you should pick him. He's the only champion that can truly isolate somebody for a 1v1. You can straight up take somebody off the map for a brawl, or just be annoying and prevent them from fighting the rest of your team while you're duking it out with them. You can jump out of Jarvan ult or knock Camille away to cancel her ult. He is also an AP juggernaut, one of the only champions to fit into this class. New design means that he's going to be very tanky, and he can deal really good AP damage in long fights. Think about a Mumu but more menacing and also able to run in the top lane. Some of his strengths are that he has a really good sustain, he has no mana, he has a really good strong all-in, and he can chase very well if he's able to activate his passive. He also has fantastic AoE damage with his passive, as well as some of his other abilities, and he does really well when people aren't running away or if the enemy team is good at engaging, and he's really hard to tower dive actually. As far as his weaknesses, he has very long cooldowns. His E is basically the equivalent of a Darius pull, and when it's up, you can get really good trades, but missing it means you lose pressure for a very long time. It's actually 24 seconds at rank 1. He's also extremely immobile and can be kited easily if he's not able to activate his passive. He has also kind of a straightforward kit, and his E has no gimmicks to it, no repositioning or redirecting like a Swain E, you just either hit it or you don't. As far as the build, there's a couple of different options that we've come up with in Scene as far as all of our testing on the PBE, the live server, seeing what he can do and what his strengths are, and sometimes the build seems like Sunfire Cape into Liandry's Torment, otherwise going into a Nashor's Abyssal Mask, Gunblade, or Rylai's Crystal Scepter. He also has a couple of different rune options like Grasp of the Undying or Conqueror, also with Ravenous Hunter. Hail of Blades, Phase Rush also seem like niche keystones for specific matchups. There's plenty of different things that you can run on the new Mordekaiser, and it's going to take a lot of testing until people figure out exactly what he needs to run in order to be successful. As far as his abilities, let's give the old rundown. Mordekaiser's passive is Darkness Rise, and this is a key part of his new identity. He's the prototypical AP juggernaut, and it's basically a stronger version of Amumu's W, while being a little bit weaker version of Swain's R. After hitting an enemy champion with 3 spells or autos, his passive will activate. Similar to Mordekaiser's original kit, he gains an AoE buff that deals damage, but he also gains an auto attack buff and movement speed now. By auto attacking or landing abilities, you can refresh the duration. The damage here is solid, and it makes him like an AP version of Darius at level 1. Later on into the game, it'll be rewarding for him to be in the center of fights, trying to take down multiple opponents and getting those resets. His Q is Obliterate, and after a brief delay, Mordekaiser slams his mace into an area in front of him. This actually covers a decent area, and is quite hard to dodge. It's not as long range as Alawi's Q, but it's definitely wider. If the target is alone, it has an extra damage multiplier. A unique thing about Mord's Q is that it scales not only with ability level, but also champion level. This makes XP essential on him, because each level increases his Q's damage and benefits from the bonus damage even more. There's no cost, and the cooldown isn't that long. You can constantly use it to harass, push, or just attempt to poke with no losses. Aside from the window that you'll give opponents to trade, there's not really a reason not to use it. If they're weaker than you, you're free to walk up and try to Q them, especially if they have to back away from their wave. This also means that you don't really have to be afraid to use it to farm. As long as you don't over-aggress and allow your opponents to punish your cooldown, it's a pretty simple ability and it's straightforward. His W is indestructible, and when activated, Mord converts a portion of damage he's recently dealt and received into a shield. He can activate a second time to convert part of that shield into health, and this is going to help Mordekaiser sustain during the laning phase and also be that deciding factor in his tankiness during teamfights. No mana cost means that you can spam this anytime, and you know you won't be fighting heavily to recover some lost health. In teamfights, it means that you'll be rewarded for dealing damage as long as you have enough cooldown to constantly pressure to reactivate your shield. Your tankiness relies on your ability to deal damage as well, so put yourself in positions where you can maximize your damage as well as your tankiness at the same time. This is going to be some of your bread and butter between being a good and a great Mordekaiser player, the one that seems like he's impossible to kill and one that seems like he sucks. Your E is Death's Grasp, and Mordekaiser sends out a claw that pulls any targets in its path backwards. The trajectory of it is fixed and detached from Mordekaiser. You cannot redirect its pathway any way back like Swain can, so wherever you start, it's going to stay. If it misses or your opponent dodges it, it's going to miss and you can't do anything about it. The distance it pulls back is also fixed. Enemies closer are pulled back just as far as enemies who are further away. So if you pull an enemy who's next to you, you'll actually throw them behind you, which is pretty slick. Another thing is that you can pull enemies over small walls with it as well. This skill is the most defining in-player skill, and it has a very long cooldown, so missing it makes you vulnerable for extended periods of time. It will help to build CDR, but players need to not waste it in the early game. It's an ability that's important to know when to not use it as much as knowing when to use it. Finally, let's talk about your R, Realm of Death. You finally get that 1v1 on Rust you've been looking for ever since the Modern Warfare 2 days. You get the real 1v1. You start away from the center, closer to the edge in a circular arena. The end of the circle are the boundaries. You cannot teleport out and nobody can get in. Shen ult will not follow you if you use Mordekaiser ult. Nothing will cause you to get anything but a 1v1. For 7 seconds, you'll be sent to a separate dimension. The Death Realm is where you'll brawl it out with your opponent. The Death Realm takes place on Summoner's Rift, but exists in another plane. Any accessories like Alawi's tentacles, Shaco boxes, anything like Heimer turrets will not follow into the Death Realm. When multiple enemies are diving you, you can turn the fight into a 1v1 under your turret. You'll only take damage from your opponent while in the Death Realm, making it much harder to tower dive you. One really good part of the ability is that even when you're not strong enough to 1v1 your opponent, you can still use it to take a strong opponent out of the fight. With its 7-second duration, a viable option will be to take out the fed carry on the enemy team and just attempt to survive in the Death Realm while your team fights on the Summoner's Rift. There are tons of unique interactions with Mordekaiser's ultimate, and they may even be subject to change. The list goes on and on. Karthus ult only hitting Mord in the Death Realm, Urgot not being able to activate ult from it, etc. For now, here are some big ones that you should be watching out for in your games. Some champions can avoid Mordekaiser's ultimate by being unstoppable or untargetable. Kled is able to avoid it while channeling his own ultimate, and Camille can avoid it by buffering her ultimate as well. Turrets can only target one champion at a time. If he or his opponent is tanking turret in the Death Realm, it won't target somebody else on Summoner's Rift. Also, if somebody creates terrain and it still remains by the end of the Death Realm's duration, it will also appear on the Summoner's Rift. Let's talk about some of Mordekaiser's combos, because even though they're simple and straightforward, they get the job done, letting you march forward mechanically. The goal of most of your combos is to E when your opponent is further away. It's a little bit easier to land because they have more time to dodge when they're close. E into Q into auto attack is the most typical combo to start off a fight. You'll E then start your Q cast right when your enemies are about to be pulled. If they're close to you, you'll have to Q backwards to land it. The other good part about this is that this combo instantly activates your passive, so you can get a solid trade or all in with it. Auto attack into Q into E means that you'll find this trade more often than lane. If your enemies don't back off after your Q, you can instead auto attack into Q into auto and then E when they're backing off. You want to be weaving those auto attacks if you can. As far as some tips for your early game, number 1, your level 1 is strong, so you fall in that niche of level 1 all-ins like Darius and Aurelia. You'll be looking for trades where you can activate your passive or extend them out as far as you can. While it can be a benefit or a curse, activating your passive will naturally cause you to push your lane. Try to think critically on whether it's safe or not to push based on jungle pressure. If it's not, you'll likely be looking for shorter trades just with your Q or letting the wave push into you first. You'll also be able to set up safer ganks for your jungler. If you see that the enemy is counter ganking, you can use your ultimate to isolate the situation into a 1v1 and stop a potential turn by your opponent. As far as mid to late game, your team fighting is nuts and it's very strong as Mordekaiser. The biggest issue has always been getting onto opponents, but you're beefy, you deal solid DPS, and are rewarded with survivability for dealing out some damage. In teamfights, be creative with your ultimate. Decide whether or not you want to single out a single target you want to kill, or take out strong enemies from the main fight before they even begin. Also, remember that you can only deal damage to one person when they go into the Death Realm, so maybe be careful if you don't want to start that 1v1, try to at least start it a little bit after the fight starts so that way you can deal AoE damage to everybody first. In side lanes, you'll be able to set up good picks and punish split pushers. With the long duration of your ultimate, you'll be able to ult early, and a teammate will have 7 seconds to arrive to help you finish the fight. You'll be a strong side laner, but you lack mobility, so be careful. Especially when ahead, you can also look to trade 1-for-1 even if you get collapsed on just by ulting an enemy. Good Mordekaiser players will always take advantage of their ultimate, and let your teammates take cross-map objectives while the enemy team run arounds attempting to stop your pressure. As far as some general tips, remember that not every ult has to result in a kill. Be creative with how you use it. You can use it to help set up your team, disorient somebody who's looking to dive in for a combo, or to initiate a pick. Try your best to reset your passive during your fights. A lot of your damage comes from it. Finally, remember that your Q does bonus damage to isolated targets. You may be better off holding onto your Q until you clear minions with your passive, or timing your E so that it'll pull minions behind you and then a champion in front of you. These are all little niche mechanics for you to understand on Mordekaiser, but just know that the more you play him, of course the better you'll get, just like every other champion. Mordekaiser seems like one of the most fun, drain tanky, and probably soon to be OP champions in League of Legends, just like every rework and every new champion. He seems super cool to play, and I hope you guys enjoy playing him with some of these tips. That's going to be it for our Mordekaiser guide. Make sure you check out ProGuides.com to check out the feature called InstaPro, which we talked about in the beginning. 24/7 on-demand coaching by the best of the best. You will not regret using this feature, and it's totally free to use. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the Rift.